10,000, 15,000 a month I was making off advertising on this search engine. It went to zero just overnight. It just, whoa, okay, got to find out something else to do here. The whole industry has a vibe like it hasn't had since those early days right now. I had over 1,000 backlinks from university websites, and I didn't understand the implications. I just had no clue what that meant. I don't know if Matt would ever say it was as a result of that, but when you're so beloved by an industry and then have somebody attack you on a stage like that, that had to hurt.
Hello and welcome to SEO Pioneers. Today I am delighted to be speaking to Brett Tabke. Brett has a very extensive background in digital, which goes right back to the early 80s. Brett actually established his first website in 1996 and then built his very first forum in 97, which he renamed in 98 to what is better known as Webmaster World. And then in 2000, Brett is probably best known for being the founder of PubCon, the SEO conference. So I'm very much looking forward to this conversation because there is a huge amount to talk about. And just to jump right in there, I think it'd be great if we take it right back to the very beginning. And so Brett, I was just going to ask you, I believe you got into computers in 1979 and then actually went online in 1982. So it'd be really great if you could just start out by telling me about that time and your experience and also how you got into bulletin board systems.
Sure. You know, I started in 79. First, it's great to be on here. Thank you. You do such a nice job with these, Shelley. Thank you for doing this series. It's been educational, and I've learned things about people I've known for 20, 25 years that I never knew about them because of you. So thank you. Thank you for sharing this with folks in SEO. So I started in 79. That was the first time I touched a keyboard on a computer. You know, growing up, obviously I was part of the 60s. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and so I watched a lot of Star Trek, and watching them talk to computers was always fascinating. And the first time I got a chance to work on a computer was when I was in high school in 79. And it was a good old Commodore, I think it was a 2001 with the little square chiclet keyboard, we called it. Hard to type. All you could do was hunt and pack. And took forever to load, and I was just fascinated by it. And I knew I wanted to go into computers. And when Commodore started selling home computers that were affordable, like the Commodore 64, VIC-20, I went over and I think I spent my last $400 on a Commodore system. I can still remember my parents being furious. Here I was getting ready to go to college, and I'd spent $400 on a computer. In 82, 400 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, that's something akin probably 2-3 grand today in the US. And I got it home, and then I went to college, and one day in the middle of computer science class, and I'd spent hours and hours in the computer science lab, the instructor just offhand said, "Yeah, you can dial into our computer." And I go, "On my home computer, I can?" Yeah. So I got a modem that very day. I went out and bought a modem and logged on to the university website, and I was just blown away. I can access all my courses. I can access some of the material. I can do it online from my dorm room. And I still remember sitting there just playing with it. I looked at the same 20 documentation they had online 20 times. I just looked at it over and over and over. And it was fascinating. So I ended up starting my own bulletin board system at that point because I wanted to learn so much more about it. And the early Commodores was all about people sharing information back and forth and back and forth. And there was so much to learn about these things. It's not like today where we have such easy access to information. It was, you know, you had to buy a lot of magazines, a lot of books to read about them, to learn. And once I started a bulletin board system, my knowledge level just went off the charts because I was reading everybody else's bulletin board, reading new stuff, how to fix stuff I had problems with it, programming. And that was just so eye-opening. And chatting with people, that was the first time I ever chatted with somebody. The first time the computer answered back to me. I said hello to somebody on the chat line, and they talked back to me. And it was just, I'm talking to somebody in New York here. It was just fascinating to me. So early on, that was the first thing is there anybody out there, you know, and you can talk to one person, maybe two, if you're lucky in a day. And that was the first start. And then I kept up with bulletin board systems, because then people call you when you run a bulletin board system, and you can talk to them all day long. So I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and I knew it was going to be my career. Very early on, I knew that's what I was going to do. So that's how I jumped into it. Good old Commodores.
Yeah, just to make a comment, I think perhaps what a lot of people don't realize, as so many people now are digitally native, and unless they're as old, well, as I am, I'm obviously not going to speak for you, Brett, but probably people don't actually realize there was a life before the internet, and that you had to go to a library if you wanted information, and we didn't have mobile phones, and access to information was much more complicated and difficult, and also communication, like you said, to actually chat with somebody in New York. I mean, that was really radical at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then later on, we'd start what are called packet services. So in the middle of the night, we'd bundle up all the messages in the forums from people and compress them. And then my BBS would call somebody in Colorado, and then they would call a bunch that were a local call in Colorado and distribute all the messages. And so we had this early kind of internet. It was packet run. So you might take a day to get an answer back on an email or a message, if it came at all. And it would come in the middle of the night, because I know the phone systems were different in the UK to the US, where in the US, these were long distance calls that cost anywhere from 5 to 20 cents per minute to make these calls. So we would do it in the middle of the night when the rates were cheaper. And that really was the first huge opening of people talking to one another, were these packet systems. And that kind of led into these packets doing a crossover with what was called Usenet, which is still around. Usenet, the giant online forum system. And there was this crossover between what was called FidoNet, PacketNet, and the internet. And then suddenly the whole world opened up then, because you were talking with people in Europe, you're talking with people all around the world. And it really opened our eyes. Those early days in the late 80s, early 90s, doing all this conversations with people overseas was, that was so educational. It just broadened our whole worldview. And then when the internet happened, 95, 96, 97, and we were regularly talking with people around the world, it just really changed the world and our worldview on everything. I think it was a huge time of personal growth for people and for countries.
Mm. So from at that point in the early 80s, how did you then move forward? I believe you were working, did you start your own software company and then you built a flight monitoring system? Is that right?
Yeah, that was my first gig. Aspen Airport in Aspen, Colorado, had a single monitor television set, good old CRT, that was a flight monitoring system. They had dozen flights a day, maybe one an hour, and it was on a TV, and you just use a Commodore 64. And I wrote their whole program for them to display their incoming, outgoing flights and save it to a little old cassette. And I got to go up there 3 or 4 times, but that was my first paying gig, was the Aspen Airport flight monitoring system. I don't know when they took it off, but it lasted for a few years for them. Good old Commodore 64 Basic. So that's how I got started. And then I was programming for years based on college. And then in 85, I wrote a major paper on, at the time, it was just called the web. We didn't have World Wide Web. We didn't have internet. It was just called the web. It'll be this giant web of computers interconnected. And later in the 80s, I thought it was going to be this packet network. That would be the height of it, not realizing that, hey, they're laying cables everywhere. Everybody's going to talk. And the modems were going to get so fast that even by the late 90s, with 56K modems, you could transmit an entire book in about a few minutes. Well, we don't think that's anything today, but in the late 80s, 2400 baud was the norm. So it was slow. You could watch print on the screen back and forth. So from talking about the World Wide Web, I got into coding some more, and I wrote several spray paint 128 for the Commodore 128, Karma assembler, which ended up in the Canadian Software Hall of Fame. Didn't come out until 91. So I wrote a bunch for that. I wrote some for what was called GEOS 128, a graphics environment operating system that was actually bundled with the Commodores in the day. Wrote a little bit of that, but there was just so little money in it because it was on the Commodores that I knew I had to do something else. And early 90s, I went to work for Gateway 2000, a computer company. Did a little bit of work for them, ran some bulletin board stuff, monitored early moderation on a bulletin board system, multi-line bulletin board system. I did that from home mostly. And then 95, wrote my first website. So that's kind of where we're headed there. I don't know where you want to go from here.
Well, obviously, I've been doing a little bit of digging about you, and what I was quite intrigued to find is apparently you created 100 websites for farm dealers. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. The first website I wrote, I believe it was late 95 or early 96. My memory fades, because you don't remember stuff. Here are these similar events and we don't remember because in the day it was nothing, it's like coming up with the acronym SERP. I didn't even remember that until a few years after it happened. Oh yeah, I thought that up. And here's the post where I did it. And it was just nothing back in the day. You don't remember stuff like that. But my first website, I wrote for a family friend who was kind of a used John Deere dealer in, where was he at the time? Somewhere in Northwest Iowa. So I wrote a little 4-page website for him. And it was just I didn't even charge him for it because it was just a little throwaway thing. Because I didn't think HTML was all that. I thought, well, this is a little throwaway language, that they're trying to communicate with. I remember the first time I worked on Mosaic when I was at Gateway, that took forever to boot. It crashed constantly. It'd take a minute to load a web page and then a minute to render that web page. Thought, this isn't going to go anywhere. It just was so huge, so crash prone. It took like 20 meg on disk. And this is at a time when hard drives were 80 to 120 meg. So it took up all your system and it did very little. I thought, this isn't going anywhere. So I kind of thought HTML was, I thought it was a little beneath me to be trudging away with HTML, and I still feel that way today. So I cranked out this little 4-page brochure site for this guy. And what I didn't know was about 60 days later, he went to a John Deere conference and somehow got my name and phone number on the screen. Oh, this is the guy who wrote this thing for me. It's on this new thing you might have heard about called the World Wide Web. And I was gone that weekend and came home to several dozen phone calls from John Deere dealers. Can you rent me a website? Can you rent me a website? Sure. So I started charging $100 a piece. I should have been charging, $1,000, $2,000 a piece. And I didn't know any better at the time. I thought it was just a little weekend job. So that's how I got started writing John Deere websites. And then they wanted maintenance. They wanted me to update them all the time. Okay. So I kept raising my rates and they kept coming back. In fact, I started to get more work. And in late 96, I put together a thing I called the Howdy Ag search engine. Early 97, that went online. It was mostly a directory, but it did have some search functionality. And so I was just indexing all these agriculture sites that I was running into. I thought, okay, so I'm going to go into ag. I'm going to be the guy on the web that, tips on agriculture stuff. So I did that, built all those websites, built the Howdy Ag search engine, goofy little search engine. I didn't understand how important that would be at the time. I just didn't have a clue. Ran that in 98, huge amount of traffic coming in. Every time I added a new link to the search engine or the directory, I would ask a university, someplace. There was nobody indexing university ag sites. So I started indexing university ag sites. And every time I did, I would, it was common courtesy in the day to email the webmaster and ask, do you mind if I link to you? Oh, yeah. And since I was a search engine for agriculture, they would link back to me. So by late 98, I had over 1,000 backlinks from university websites, and I didn't understand the implications. I just had no clue what that meant. Today, I can hear people in the audience watching this. 1,000 backlinks from university websites would just be incredible today. I didn't understand it at the time. And late 98, I had so many emails with these dealers asking questions that I started a little fact site I called Search Engine World. And then I put a little forum on there where they could ask questions. And I was hoping, well, maybe other people can answer these because I'm not getting paid to answer these. And the forum took off and it was on my ISP. So I moved it over to searchengineworld.com and it took off there. And so I finally realized this is an entity unto itself. So in 98, I moved it off Search Engine World to Webmaster World and wrote the forum software on there that is still running today. And that's kind of my early start was writing all these facts to these dealers to answer their questions. And how to get traffic was the question. Because 97, the only thing we had Excite, we had Lycos, Alta Vista, but the big thing was getting into the Yahoo directory. If you got into the Yahoo directory, you were going to get a ton of traffic. So everything was about learning how to get in the Yahoo directory. So that's kind of the origin story, I guess you could call it, of Webmaster World, how Webmaster World started. So
that is fascinating to know that Webmaster World started
yes.
as a basis for John Deere farm dealers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But then it transitioned to SEO very quickly, just pure SEO, because everybody was curious how to get traffic, because everybody knew no traffic, no money. So that's how we're going to get paid. So
yeah, it's been really interesting actually speaking to a lot of the pioneers, because a lot of them talk about Webmaster World, and as you probably know, there was a bit of you were either create a site or Webmaster World. Is that right? Back in the day, was that something that you were aware of, or?
Oh yeah, there was create a site, and the big one was search engine forums. That was the early one. Jim Wilson and Wilson Web, Jim World, I guess it was called. He was the first. He broke it. And the problem with having a forum in those early days was the software was just pretty heavy for the computers of the day. It really would bog down a computer, and it was nothing to have 5 to 10 second wait to get a page to load. Now we wait 5/10 of a second, we're upset. So yeah, it was pretty heavy, but Gem World was the first. And so there was this barrier to entry. You had to have a pretty good server to run forum software. So there was a pretty good barrier. People weren't throwing up websites everywhere, but that writing my own software helped. I cut a lot of the middlemen out and a lot of the wait time out. So I think that was part of it too. It was just so functional back in the day and easy. So
yeah, I mean, you certainly quickly drew a really impressive crowd. I think, a lot of the big pioneers were involved. As I say, I think a lot of them either fell into Create a Site camp or Webmaster World camp and tended to stick with that.
Yeah.
It became
quite. Yeah, it was so many of the early guys that, and a few women as well. Christine Churchill was there, and a little later, Jen Slegg showed up. But yeah, it was many of the core people that are still with us today. You interviewed Greg Bozer. He was an early admin on Webmaster World. And then once we started attracting the likes of like Matt Cutts in 2000 as Google guy, it's like, wait, you got a Google person in here? Well, there was such animosity between the search engines and webmasters that I just went, you know what, we got to have some outside people come in here. So I went to Matt and I said, Matt, you want to come in and start posting? He was like, okay, but I can't use my name. I said, great, come in as Google guy. It'll be authoritative. People will respect it, and we'll try and keep the monkey business out of it. And which was very difficult. It was very difficult to keep people from going after Matt and after Google. And so. But to back up, one thing I wanted to back up to was when I wrote the ag search engine and got all those links, and then moved the forum off of my ISP site to Search Engine World, Webmaster World, I put up a 301 redirect on my ISP site to redirect all of that traffic over to Webmaster World. And later, I'm going to guess 99, when Google had their first big investment. And they'd gone beyond their first build. They were building their first big database of hundreds of millions of URLs, and they were advertising greatly. Well, they went out and started scraping all these websites just mercilessly. I had 4 directory sites that were just picked clean by Google. Other people say, oh, I haven't seen Google in months. Where are they at? Excuse me. And Google would come into these directories and just scrape them bare. They wanted the links. They were authoritative, just like when they went to Yahoo. You know, that when they seeded PageRank, it started on Yahoo because Yahoo had authority. It was human filtered. It had expertise. It had all the things Google likes for PR. The same is true about the hand edited directories out there. So they came into my site and they just picked it clean repeatedly. Anytime I had a link, they would follow it. Even I tried redirecting the links through redirects and banning Googlebot. They'd follow them through by hand. You could tell that it came straight in from a Google IP. They wanted the links very badly. They wanted those authority links. So in late 99, then we had the crash when the advertising market crashed, the internet crashed, basically all the stocks crashed in late 99. And all of my advertising revenue just dried up overnight because nobody was advertising like that. We were making 12 CPM, 12 per thousand in 98 and 99, which was good money. It was 10,000, 15,000 a month I was making off advertising on this search engine. It went to zero just overnight. It just, whoa, okay, got to find out something else to do here. So I took that search engine offline and I redirected all of those links to Webmaster World. Well, it wasn't until about 2008 it finally dawned on me that all those backlinks were still running through that 301 redirect. And my ISP quit redirecting. They eliminated their whole private sites and eliminated that whole directory that I'd had for years. Because even after I moved, I kept paying them because I wanted those redirects. Within about 90 days, you could definitely see the traffic, which was pretty steady, just drop about 20% on Webmaster World after that redirect went away, almost 10 years later. That's how important those 301 redirects were from all of those university sites, all of those university links. It was a lesson in PageRank that I really didn't fully grasp until probably 2007, 2008 when it happened. So get those links and keep them. So anyway, that's kind of a backstory on the 301s.
So at this time when you were running Webmaster World, were you actually actively working as an SEO, or were you just devoting all your time into the ag search engine?
Early on, I spent most of my time building websites. And then after that, I didn't take on any more websites by 98, 99, because I was making so much in advertising that I thought that was the future, was jump into advertising. And then that crashed. So I had to find something else to do there. And then Webmaster World took off. And then later PubCon took off. But I still have some John Deere dealer sites that I do maintenance on and help out with from time to time. And they still call me and I coach them on certain things. Most of them have big time agencies now they use. And John Deere kind of dictated some stuff from top down. You will do this. You will, if you're going to use the John Deere brand, you have to do X, Y, and Z. So they had to get these big agencies, but there's still a few that call me and ask me advice, and I coach them on what to do tech wise. And no, your agency is just charging you this for nonsense, or jump into this, or I got a call 2 weeks ago about AI. What are you going to do with AI? You know, so I walked them through AI and how it might help them as a dealership. So I still got my hands in it a little bit, but less than I used to, of course. So it's all about PubCon now. So,
so I believe, is it true you were saying that you cracked the algorithm for Alta Vista quite early on?
yes,
Yeah. So
yeah.
what led to that?
Well, it was actually quite easy. It led to a conversation. One was with Bruce Clay, and another was with another SEO programmer I knew. And we started wondering, what are all the criteria for the Alta algo? And is it based on simply position, like where the keyword is, density? Is it in the URL? Is it in a heading? So we just tried to one up each other and figure out where the Alta Vista algo was at, where keywords needed to be on the page, how they're crawling. And we got fascinated by it. And we were able to come up with a criteria. I don't know the exact number. I'm going to guess like 70 different parameters went into the Alta Vista algo. Now today, there's probably 5,000 in the Google algo. that they use, different parameters, filters. Um, so it wasn't that difficult actually. Once we had the mindset of, okay, this is how they rank pages. Now let's figure out the specifics. Where's the keyword go in the title? Do we need 2 keywords in the title? Are there synonyms? Are there antonyms? Is it in a header? Is it in the page in bold? Is it in a paragraph? Is it in the footer? Is it in a menu? Um, so we just started narrowing it down by process. And once you look at enough pages and enough keywords, enough titles, it all kind of flatlines in the graph. You're like, okay, we figured that one out. We figured that one out. Once you figure that out, I think we had 98, 99% of the algo. There was some random stuff we didn't understand that we never did. In fact, we think it probably was a randomization routine. Just kind of like, yeah, we don't know. Let's throw our hands in the air and randomize this parameter on this page. And later on at Alta, before they were sold to Yahoo, they actually started using individual algos for different topics. They were trying to do these little vertical search engines. So then the algo didn't track across the plane. But once we had it, once we had the original Alta algo, you could roll a page. Just tell me the keyword and I'll roll you a page, and we'll get in the top 1, 2, or 3 on that. Most famously got number 1 on MP3 for a week, which led to millions upon millions of page views. My server couldn't handle it. It was so many page views. We got number 1 on for one of the Pokemons at the time. Pokemon was hot in the late 90s. We were tops on Pokemon. There was some other kids stuff we got tops on, but you could just flatline it. Give me a keyword. I'll roll you a page and get it. And then the big thing happened. The insurance companies announced that they had been cloaking, and we hadn't heard of cloaking before. This would have been, I'd say, mid 98, early 99. Cloaking, huh? So we started in rolling pages on cloaking, and our competitors, how is that possible? How is that even possible to be able to hide the page, get it to rank for your keyword? And they couldn't tell because they couldn't see the source, because we were only feeding the source to Alta Vista, to the Alta crawler. So that was kind of Alta Vista. We got a good run on Excite, but Excite was weird. They just didn't update often enough. We could get to a point, but Excite 6 weeks later they had to update and it'd blow away all their parameters. They just twist a bunch of dials and knobs. So what you thought worked last month is no longer going to work this month. So we think they just change stuff to be changing stuff to pass traffic around to different sites, get more notoriety. So that was early Alta, Excite, and we took a good run at Lycos, but there just wasn't enough traffic at Lycos. InfoSeek, we got pretty close on InfoSeek, and the beauty of InfoSeek was you could build a page, get it indexed, and see the results in a few hours. You just had to submit a page and it would pop back at you in a few hours. It was magical. So we took a pretty good run at InfoSeek, but InfoSeek just didn't have enough traffic until they sold to Disney, go.com. So that was the early days. That was fun. That was wild, wild west.
So when Google came along, did a lot of what was working on Alta Vista translate across to Google, or was that a whole new set of learning?
Well, when Google tipped, when I was running ads for Burst Media on Search Engine World, on my ISP site that was Search Engine World at the time before I moved it to .com, they were running ads through Burst Media. So I ran hundreds of thousands of ads for Google, banner ads for Google. And this is cool. I got to start a website about this. So that was part of the inspiration to spin it off into its own domain. I thought, okay, more credibility. It's got its own brand. It's got its own domain. So I did a lot of research on Google in the early days, and I didn't like it. It was goofy. They had the weird bars on the SERPs. They actually had page rank called Search Scout on the original SERP was page rank indicator that they called Search Scout, which was page rank. But there it was, the little green bar right next to your search result. I thought, who's going to use this? This is so goofy. And the index was so small at the time. There was no traffic coming from Google in the early days. And then Search Engine Watch, Sullivan over there, he writes this I don't know. I call it Danny's love letter to Google that just praised Google up and down. It was so over the top. We were like, does this guy work for Google? So it was really kind of weird. There was a huge thread on Webmaster World in the moderators forum at the time. It's like, who's Google? Why is he covering Google? We just knew that he had been invited to the Googleplex and he had been wowed by the Google guys at the time, Larry and Sergey. And little did I know it was probably the most prophetic article ever written about Google, because in a few months after they built that first huge index, I think it was, well, I don't remember exactly how many billion URLs they indexed for the first big public unveiling. Beyond the beta and beyond the little Search Scout stuff, then it started to show some promise. It was finding stuff that you would have to dig an awful lot on Alta Vista to find, an awful lot on, well, at the time, all the web had just, Fast had moved to all the web. It was about that time that Yahoo made the deal with Google for results. Once Yahoo made that deal with Google, it was like, oh, okay, this is real. This is happening. Google is a major player in the search market, because at the time it was Ink2Me. Ink2Me was huge. They were servicing Fast. They were servicing Hotbot, which was pretty big. I believe they were servicing Alta Vista. And paid inclusion was huge at the time too. But yeah, once they got on Yahoo, it was like, okay, this is the real deal here. And then we really just had to jump into links. I started a linking service called Buddy Links. It was the original link farm. It's where I coined the term link farm. And we started exchanging links with everybody. And suddenly all the links went from nice little websites, educational websites, blogs, pre-blogs, and suddenly started coming in pornography, diet pills, all the seedier side of the web. And I went, oh, I don't want to put these links on my website. We're not exchanging links with these people. And then it became real clear, well, Google can detect this easily. There's no reason a search engine couldn't detect all this and understand the linking and discount it all. So I shut down Buddy Links. And that was the first time I had an email from Matt Cutts. He says, I was impressed you shut down Buddy Links. And yeah, it's time. You can detect it all. And I wasn't crazy about some of the people we were associating with. And okay. And that was where we had the original conversation of, why don't you come into Webmaster World? Why don't you start posting? Let's see if we can build some bridges here between webmasters and search engines. You know, the animosity was just ripe between the two at the time. So I had Matt come in and he started posting, just answering questions. That's wrong. This is right. We've never done that. We won't do this. You know, just clarifying stuff for people. And that was the early days of Google, really, just getting a good start there. And then, like I say, in late 2000, late 99, early 2000, I don't remember exactly when the crash happened. When that happened, we all had to adjust and use Google, because that took down Alta Vista, basically. Ink2Me was on its last leg with paid inclusion. But coding for Google was an entirely different critter. It was entirely different. And the traffic from Google was a fraction of what it had been from Alta Vista. And I still think to this day, they're doing some type of, some people call it traffic shaping or traffic filtering or time of day, whatever it is. We think there is probably a filter somehow. Websites only get this much traffic if you're not in the top tier based on PR. Okay, you're only going to get this much traffic out of Google, because you can rank high for a keyword, get a ton of traffic, and then it just disappears. It'll disappear. Time of day, it'll disappear. Weekend, it'll disappear. During the week, it'll disappear, and then it'll come back. So we think there may be some sort of traffic shaping going on with Google. And I think that was done in the very early days because it never had the same patterns of traffic that Alta Vista, Lycos, Yahoo had. It was a different animal, the early days of Google. So
going back to those, like the early search engines, when there was such a vast range of search engines and a lot more competition, did you envisage the marketplace would always be that way, that it would be competition Or did you, when Google came, did you realize that they would suddenly dominate like they have?
No, we always thought there'd be another player, because once Google came along and showed everybody, so the big early search engines, Lycos, Excite, Fast, all the web, Yahoo, they were running on what we call big iron. They were running on Sun workstations, 50, 60, $70,000 workstations, ton of RAM, ton of storage space. And like Excite was a server room of about 25 of these that ran the entire Excite network, but they were super big and super expensive. Along comes Google and says, yeah, we're going to do the same thing with a rack of PCs we bought at Walmart. They literally bought the first rack of PCs in their dorm room from Walmart when they got the $100,000 investment. That's quite a difference. Talking millions of dollars in hardware at Excite to hundreds of thousands of dollars. They went down to Walmart and purchased and put in a computer. That changed the entire paradigm of search engines. I thought we'd see a lot more searches. Okay, now that Google has shown everybody they can do it on cheap, easy PC hardware, I thought, oh, search engines are going to be everywhere. Everybody will have a search engine, you know? And it just never came to pass because Google was so good at what it did. You know, it was so good at finding stuff that by 2002, it was obvious they were head and heels above anybody else, quality-wise, results-wise. It was reliable. It was quirky. They did one thing and they did it better than anybody else did it without question. And they still do that today. So I thought there'd be a lot of search engines by now. I thought they'd be raining from the trees for decades to come because they were so easy to build. I thought there'd be easy software that people could download. Oh, I want to start a search engine today. Where do I get that open source piece of software from? And it just hasn't come to pass. It really speaks to the power of branding and to the power of breaking first, which you kind of think Google maybe broke first. They figured it out first, being Search 2.0. But there's a lot of lessons to learn there from what Google has done. It's just fascinating to me to look back and think Google is now kind of the Kleenex or the Hoover of the internet with regard to brands, you know?
Well, yeah. When it becomes a verb to Google, you know, you've made it, right?
Yep, exactly.
So when you had your ag search engine, did you ever envisage sort of taking that into a bigger business or developing it in some way?
Yeah, I started a few other directories. I think I had 4 at the time. I thought, okay, I'll just build this small network of directories, and I'd started on them, various topics. Some were webmaster related. One was SEO related. One was golf related. I wrote some golf websites back in the day. And most of those had established players by the time I started. So I didn't think they were going to take off the way they were, but I envisioned a big directory of networks of directories. And then when the crash happened and all the advertising disappeared, I go, what kind of business did I get myself into here that you can go from 10 to 15,000 a month in advertising to zero almost overnight? It was stunningly shocked. So I knew I had to find something else to do. So but yeah, I really did. I thought I'd be writing directories still today, and I occasionally still think about starting one again, but and what's the point? Advertising just isn't there today. So
I often imagine what a different world it would be. Can you imagine if we had like hundreds of niche search engines, you know, like you said, a golf one, a sports one, you know, pets or books? It would be really fascinating to see how that would have developed. But yes, we all answer to Google now, don't we? The behemoth that be Google.
Yeah. It's really been fascinating to see now that we're talking about AI and the search engine kind of wars coming back. You know, it's really got kind of an old feel to it. You know, I joked it's fun to see the girls fighting again. You know, it's like Bing has really come out swinging on this, acting almost like a little agile startup, you know?
Yeah.
Moving fast and breaking things.
It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the next few years. Very, very interesting. So just going back, obviously one of what you're best known for is PubCon. So actually, just before I ask you about that, did you go to, because Search Engine Strategies was before PubCon, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, they
Did
had
you go to theirs?
No, I had never been to a search engine strategies. I think my first search engine strategy was in Dallas in early 2000. I
Right.
spoke on a panel, and it was where we formed Simpo, which was the big search engine marketing professionals organization, was in Dallas. So that was my first big SEO related conference, but I'd been to many, many conferences. And in the 80s, I was involved with some of these new age groups, I don't know, large group awareness trainings, large conferences, weekend conferences, 1,000 people, and I would help set them up. And so I had a lot of experience setting up conferences, everything from AV systems to chairs and food. And I really got exposed to it back then. And it's always kind of interesting to me. There was one weekend I took over for the guy whose job it was to set up the conference. And one of the directors come over and said, "Hey, you do a better job for free than the guy we're paying to do it." So it always stuck with me. And so when PubCon came around, it was like, it's natural transition for me.
So you already had quite a bit of experience of,
Yeah.
yeah, I see. So at what point did you formulate the idea to start PubCon?
Well, it was completely kind of by accident. The original PubCon was in 2001 in London. I don't know how many people were there. The stories always grow bigger down the line, down the years, as people tell them and retell them. I think it was a couple dozen people showed up at the original one. I wasn't at it. A couple of gentlemen posted on Webmaster World, "Hey, I'm going to London. Who wants to get together for a pint?" And yeah, a couple dozen people showed up at the first one. And then we wanted to do it again. The moderators wanted to do it in California. And I think we had somewhere 50 to 60 people that just, "Hey, let's go to a bar for the afternoon." And when we went to the bar for the afternoon, it was the weekend after Google launched AdWords. It was their first AdWords campaign. And Google sent down, how would I describe them? Two 18-year-old cheerleaders. Blonde, very short skirts, had no clue what AdWords was. They were carrying AdWords banners. "Yeah, we're here to sign you up for AdWords." Well, number one, who invited you? Number two, get the bar tab if you're going to pitch. We were just like, I can still remember sitting there with Joe Laracho looking over. So this is Google. This is Google. This is what Google's doing. To this day, I don't know what they were thinking of. I've asked Matt Cutts about it. I've asked several people at Google. What was, I don't know, somebody hired them early on, and I thought that's what Google was. I thought it was kind of a joke at first. This is their advertising. So somebody got a clue pretty quick. And then we went back to London. So we went from 75 people in a bar in California, and London was going to be the first one I was going to run. And it was just us getting together in a bar again. Well, it started to take on a life of its own real quick. We went from 75 people to over 350 people, 12 exhibitors, 2 major sponsors, people like GoToast. Dave Carlson was there. He later sold that to Aquantive, which became Microsoft Advertising, who's now a VC based on that early GoToast stuff. Matt Cutts came, Danny Sullivan came. The amount of work that went into it was, for 4 months, I couldn't do anything but this conference. People were calling constantly, trying to handle the signups, sending people tickets. And it was supposed to be a team effort. It was supposed to be all the moderators on Webmaster World, everybody that had been involved. Well, the team effort was me. I was the one answering all the phone calls, all the emails. I literally had to put my job, what I was doing at the time, on hold in order to do that. And once we got to actually to the conference, I'd put so much work into it that I thought, okay, we'll sit down in London and we'll make sure we get this all straight. And we all understand if this is going forward, it's got to be a team effort. Because this is using my name, it's using Webmaster World, my personal name. I got my brand on the line here with this thing. And leading up to it, I started to understand who a lot of these people were. I hadn't investigated them too much by that point. There were some people running some pretty dodgy websites. I think it was Dave Naylor who said there were some folks running porn sites. Yeah, they were running some of the worst of the worst. There were some radical political sites being run by moderators, diet pill sites left and right that were pretty sketchy. Mailed in from Malaysia. You didn't know what was in this stuff. So I'd kind of decided right then that I didn't want to be associated with it. So I'd kind of given them an ultimatum. Hey, get it off Webmaster World, take it someplace else. I can't be associated with this. Well, we get there and it's 350 people, all these exhibitors, all these sponsors, all this work and effort. And then about 2:00 in the afternoon, I see a bunch of these folks piling in little black cabs outside of the city of York and leaving. And we had just started. Where are you guys going? Oh, we're going to have a little meetup. Well, at the time, I didn't understand what they meant, but they were having an affiliate meetup to sell advertising on porn sites and diet pills and that stuff. Well, honestly, I felt kind of, betrayed about it. In fact, I went for a walk around the pub that day. I walked down High Holborn trying to figure it out. And I just realized, hey, this has either got to stop. I either got to take this over and run it, or it's got to get off my site, because I didn't want to be associated with that kind of crowd. I didn't want to dig into that side of the web. That was not my deal. There was a little bit of gambling sites in there back in the day when it was still legal in the States to gamble online. So that was kind of where some of the bad blood started. There were only two people that really helped out in those early days, and that was Teresa Nevix up in Alaska, and Todd Friesen now at, who's he with? Salesforce. Todd helped out a great deal. In fact, I even hired Todd for a few years. So those were the only two that really helped out. And so I kind of felt better that I was left holding the candle, but they wanted part of the profits as well. So from there on, I just said, hey, you guys either do it. And they said, oh, I just want to go to Europe to have a write-off, business write-off in Europe. Oh, okay. I thought it was going to be professional. I mean, I thought we were doing it for our jobs, and they were just doing it for entertainment. I wanted to turn it into a business, and they wanted to sit around and drink beer. I wanted to have a real conference. They wanted to go have the bar and have a beer. So that's really where it happened, that I said, okay, either you do it or I'm going to do it. If I'm going to do it all the time, I'm going to turn this into a business. We got to have a real conference. We got to have sessions. We got to invite the search engines. Oh, okay, whatever. And so that was really kind of where it started. And then Clark Walton registered the name PubCon, and Clark was a lawyer early on who helped me a great deal, and he sent me, hey, I see you got a trademark on PubCon. I said, yeah, I trademarked it. So he sent it over to me. That was the early days of PubCon, I guess. And then the next one was in Orlando, which just happened to hit. Oh no, the next one was in Boston. We went to Boston. That was the first one in Boston, where we had a panel of 4 guys. We had Tim Meyer, Dan Boberg, Matt Cutts, and Paul Gardee. Paul Gardee was Teoma. Tim Meyer was All the Web, Fast. Matt Cutts was Google, and Dan Boberg was Yahoo, formerly GoTo. So we had actual sessions, in a hotel, and had to charge a fee and everything. It was like a real conference. So that was the early days.
Can I just ask you that? So I've got to ask you this question. Is
Sure.
Is it true that the name PubCon is literally from a conference in a pub?
Yeah, that somebody said, hey, it's just like a conference. It says, yeah, it's a pub conference. And that's where PubCon came from. Yeah.
Because I heard, can't remember who told me the story, but apparently the story was that there was a few of the guys, I think it was Mike Mackin, wanted to go to Europe and go on a bit of a booze up, and they just had it as an excuse that they were going to have a conference.
Exactly.
Oh, it is true then, the myth is true.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's not made up. PubCon stands for pub conference, conference in a pub. So,
So,
and when we went to California, into Irvine, California, to have it, we were going to try and call it BarCon. But then let's see, Tim Meyer came out he was with Ink to Me at the time. That was just before PubCon California, 2000, and let's see, when would that have been? That would have been 2002, February. The Ink to Me spam database. Somebody had sent me a login to what was called the Ink to Me spam database, and you could log right in. It wasn't protected, and here was a list of all the URLs they had banned and comments, and many of the comments were Bob Smith, SEO. Here's a spammer, and they had name after name, and it was like a who's who of our industry. And this was just before then. And so I published it on Search Engine World. I published all about this on Search Engine World and let everybody log in and see it. And Tim came out to California to kind of talk me off the ledge about this, because we couldn't believe that they were naming names, that they had specific. How did they figure out who the SEO was on this site? It was a random website. How do you know that was Bob Smith that did the SEO on that website? And so it left a really bad taste about Ink to Me in all the SEO's mouth. But we went out there to California, and we were going to do BarCon, and Tim Meyer was there, and he says, like, I'm really supposed to go back to the office on Monday morning and turn in receipts from a bar conference. So we knew BarCon wouldn't fit, so we switched it to PubCon. And occasionally somebody would say, yeah, it stands for Publishers Conference. And that worked great until about 2005, when a bunch of publishers on the East Coast came to PubCon Las Vegas. Where are all the publishers? We thought the New York Times was going to be here. We thought the LA Times. That guy's from the LA Times. Where's all the publisher stuff? They thought it was newspaper publishing. And we're like, no, it's a conference in a pub. So that's where PubCon came from. Definitely a conference in a pub.
so you actually weren't at technically the very first one, which was in the
No, I wasn't. No.
Yeah, that was in the
No.
was it the city of York? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first 4 were at the city of York. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in fact, if you join the PubCon group, on Facebook, I just posted a huge list of every conference we've done. All I think 47 major ones. So yeah.
At what point did it find its home of Las Vegas?
Well, we did the one in Orlando in 2004, January, February, which was just after the famous Florida update. I used to name all the Google updates on Webmaster World. We give them all, update Katrina, update this and that, and we came up with update Florida. They were usually named after people, and to this day, I knew a guy in college named Florida. I don't know if that was actually his name or whether that was his nickname. Go talk to Florida, and everybody knew who you were talking about. So I named the Florida update after that guy, and it just happened that was the first major Google update. That was when Google really threw the elbow and said, no, we're not going to stand for this. You're not going to spam us to death. And they went after the entire diet pill industry, all of these affiliate sites. They backlinked them. There was a company called Web Position. And in the day, there was Web Position Blue Line. It was a GIF that you would put on your website to track hits to your website. And then you go to Web Position and you'd know how many page views you had that day. Well, a search engine banned everybody that was running Web Position Gold based on that GIF, blueline.gif, that was on their website. And so along comes Google, and they started backtracking everybody from specific affiliate vendors. If you had links from this affiliate site or that affiliate site, they just assumed. They went down entire sector lists of affiliate sites and kicked them out. You're gone. Huge swaths of our industry were just deleted from Google. And that was the Florida update. And that was just before our first major conference. We had a 4-track conference in Orlando at a dive of a hotel. I went down to look at this hotel, and they put me in this nice suite. It had just been renovated, There was construction equipment all around. This is, sorry, we're renovating the hotel. We have this one wing that's done. So they put me in this nice suite. It was very luxury, opulent. 9 months later, we get to the hotel, and well, those were the only suites that got renovated. Everything else was still in its 1940s and 50s glory. And if you know anything about Florida, it has high humidity, and old carpet has a smell to it. And so we showed up, and we had all these reservations, and there was a line out the door. And I go, oh, why is there a line out the door at registration? So, well, I guess their computer isn't working. Later, we found out their online reservation system was not actually hooked up to anything. It was just taking reservations, and they were just going into the air. But we had this conference, and it was remarkably profitable. It was one of the most profitable conferences I've ever had, because their bill was, I think it was $50 a day per person, and we were charging like $450, $500. Where today, the one here in Austin, we're talking easily $600, $700 per person for a whole conference. And it was in this dive of a hotel, 4 tracks. We had exhibitors galore. I think we had 18 exhibitors, full booths, go-tos, the likes of them. And then something funny happened. We done with the conference, and then we're going to do PubCon. We're still going to get together in the pub on Saturday afternoon. So we rented out a pub in downtown Orlando. And when we got back from the pub, oh man, the hotel had flipped over to another conference. And here were 3/4 naked people walking around the hotel, some of them being led by a leash. And we're like, what is going on here? A swingers convention had moved into this hotel, an actual swingers convention, and it was starting to get into the fun hours. It was after evening meal, and they were having a conference, and it was all blacked off, and a bunch of webmasters snuck into this thing, and they came back with their eyes just wide open. But we sat around the lobby just watching these people and laughing at them coming out of this conference, mostly half naked. So PubCon Florida lives in infamy, and anybody who is there, you talk about PubCon Florida, oh yeah, and boom, we're off to the races with nostalgia. It doesn't matter who it is. 20 some years later, we still talk about PubCon Florida as one of the most favorite PubCons ever.
Who knew swingers have conferences?
Oh, really? And they do it every year. And the guy that run the place said, you should be lucky. Last year they were here, and we didn't realize we had booked them against a Baptist ministers convention. Oh, it was hilarious. So, and that was the first big tip. That was, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the database. I still have it. It was like 500 people came to Florida, and we're like, okay, where are we going next? And we kind of sat on it for a while because there was so much work. Florida was just nonstop follow-up, nonstop work. We went back to London that summer, had another huge conference in London, just a pub get together type. And then we had to do something in Vegas. I went out to Vegas in August of 2004. And it was just at the time, I don't know if you remember, a big conference called Comdex. Well, Comdex had just canceled and said they're done. Well, that was 100,000 people that Vegas lost. Like, you want to come have a conference during that week? Yeah, why not? So they had all this space at the convention center for very cheap out there. So we went out to Vegas. I booked it in August, and we had the conference in November. Nowadays, you got to have 6 to 9 months lead time. And pre-COVID, my last contract out there was for 5 years at the convention center, which they blew away during COVID. They force majeure. They got rid of all of our contracts, null and void on all of that. So we're not stuck with that. But yeah, we were booking that far ahead. And Vegas was just a good idea. Everybody just wanted to go to Vegas. So we went out there, and the convention center was just lovely. We enjoyed it. Everybody loved going to Vegas. All the search guys loved them. Who doesn't like going to Vegas? But here we are 20 years later, and it's pretty obvious that Vegas, it's a destination event. And we've known for years that people go out there to go to Vegas. So the focus isn't necessarily on the conference. And I just posted in the Facebook group, our highest rated conferences ever have all been here in Austin. very close. This last one was very close to a perfect 5 across the board from 100 people out of the 450 we surveyed. Where Vegas, it works hard to get to 4. Doesn't matter who we have for a speaker or how many search engines or how many exhibitors. It just doesn't do well. Well, we're competing with Vegas. And it's hard to compete with Vegas, for people's attention and their enjoyment. And they don't consider when they go to a hotel and win $500 at the roulette table that was because we brought you out there, and it probably should be because of PubCon. So Vegas has been good to us. I can't complain. So
who have looking back, what is it? It's 20. Is it 23? 23 years, isn't it? Yeah,
yep.
23 years of PubCon. So who've been your favorite speakers?
Well, we've had some pretty big keynotes. We had Satya Nadella, who's now the CEO of Microsoft. We had him before he was CEO at the time. I believe that was at the time Steve Ballmer was CEO. That was a big one. Craig Newmark. I love Craig Newmark. Craig Newmark is a geek's geek, from Craigslist, the owner of Craigslist. He's a geek's geek. He goes way back as well. And so we sat around and talked Commodore, and we talked things like the Well, and that's he's a favorite one. Who else did we have? Oh, we had Robert X. Cringely, who hosts shows on PBS. David Pogue, New York Times tech writer. Now I believe he's on CBS this morning, talking AI. In fact, he was talking AI this last week. He was a good one. Probably my all-time favorite, though, besides Matt Cutts, of course, I love Matt Cutts, always will, would be Guy Kawasaki. He was a single-digit employee at Apple. He was their head software evangelist. He was the first one that put the word evangelist into the tech sector. Nobody had called themselves an evangelist before. And he was the one responsible for getting, what was it? Aldous PageMaker, I believe, onto the Mac, that kind of saved the Mac in the late 80s. And Guy's just a brilliant guy, just brilliant. I think we've had him 6 or 7 times, and I'll have him back 6 or 7 times more if he'll come. So that's kind of our big ones. Oh yeah, and we had Tony Hsieh of Zappos. Rest in peace, Tony. He died not long ago. So that are some of the big ones, and then we had Dave Carlson of GoToast, multi-billionaire, I assume by now, after selling to Microsoft as part of the Aquantive deal. Leo Laporte, he's got a big TV show on streaming, been around forever. Twit TV. So yeah, we've had some really good keynotes. Malcolm Gladwell, love his books. Tipping Point. So
yeah,
some of the better ones.
Yeah, I saw Malcolm speak in Manchester in the UK. Very, very interesting guy.
He was also the most expensive keynote we ever did. We don't pay a lot for keynotes because we get pretty much anybody we want to put them on our stage. But yeah, Malcolm, he was so expensive. And I tell you what, I keep Malcolm's picture on our website to this day. We're going to milk you for all you're worth, Malcolm.
So in the 23 years, has there been any particularly outstanding controversial moments happened at PubCon?
Yeah, probably Jason Calacanis. Let's see, that would have been 2015 or 16. Really, well, he ran Mahalo, a search engine at the time. And Mahalo got basically demoted, penalized, booted out, whatever you want to call it, over Panda and Penguin, the big Google updates. And Jason didn't have a lot of good things to say about Matt Cutts on stage. We had him as a keynote speaker on a Tuesday, I believe, and then Matt spoke on a Wednesday. He kind of went after Matt, called Matt a liar, said he was FOS, kind of went after him pretty hard. And I just didn't think it was fair to Matt. So I sent the video to Matt, said, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was going to go after you like this. Matt said, oh, no problem. Well, Matt came out and said a few things and responded. And it was just a few months later, Matt said, yeah, I'm going to take a sabbatical. I won't be at PubCon next year. Oh, well, okay. And that's when the sabbatical turned into permanent leaving Google. I don't know if Matt would ever say it was as a result of that, but when you're so beloved by an industry and then have somebody attack you on a stage like that, that had to hurt. So that was probably the most controversial thing that happened at PubCon, from my point of view anyway. I know others might see it differently, but I think it was pretty obvious what Calcanus did to Matt. So
Yeah, I mean, would you invite Jason back after doing that, or?
I did have him back because I was going to have him on second. We had him back a second year. And I was going to have Matt speak first and give Matt an opportunity. And to have him back now would be quite different. It would be something else. So we don't want to rule anybody out because they could be, anybody. We even had Danny Sullivan, a prime competitor. And what did Danny do at PubCon? He got up and talked about his new product, search engine, his conference. That was kind of controversial as well. Took a few years to get over that. But I try not to rule anybody out. If they bring value and they want to, respect the community, sure, we'll have them back out. So.
How do you think it's changed? So, I mean, 2000 SEO industry was very, very different to what it is in 2023. How has PubCon evolved, do you think, over the years? Like the atmosphere?
Well, we started out when we first had our first sessions, it was all about SEO, just pure SEO, nonstop. And then as Google came along and as traffic numbers never picked up the way they were supposed to for a lot of websites, became obvious that once social media came around, we had to play social media because there's a ton of traffic there. It's not just about the SEO. It's not just about search engines getting listed or ranked high. It's about traffic, just whatever brings you traffic. So now we use the phrase full stack marketing conference because we cover things like AI and email and newsletters and social media and the different formats of social media and different advertising, from social advertising to PPC advertising to the different search engines, all these different vehicles and venues that people have to attract and get attention, we cover. Whereas back then we didn't care about it. Now we care about content marketing almost as much as we do SEO, because content marketing is probably the only viable source of alternative long-term traffic to the search engines at this point in time. So yeah, it's changed remarkably. It's not just search anymore. It's big, broad spectrum of marketing.
Yeah, I mean, what do you feel is the future way? I mean, it's obviously difficult to say, but have you got any idea of where you might want to take PubCon in the next few years?
Well, this stuff with AI, we just finished it down here in Austin, a PubCon Austin, and Bing talked nothing but AI. Google, they're not ready to talk AI publicly, and we understand that until they have a product to put out there. They don't want to, write checks they can't cash. So Bing talked extensively about AI, and every session he went into, AI. We were chatting before we started here about Google and Microsoft going at each other over AI. And I don't know where it's going to end up, but it sure is nice to see them fighting again. It's just nice to see them come out. And the whole industry has a vibe like it hasn't had since those early days right now. People are excited. They're looking for product. They're looking for startup stuff. Meanwhile, we got every major tech brand laying off people by the tens of thousands. And we've got this little cottage industry coming around. And I think SEO is currently perfectly primed to take advantage of it, where other people are still trying to suss out what it is. We're like, oh yeah, it's about content. It's about knowing how to get content in front of people and getting long-term buy-in to that content. And if AI generates it and it's better than the content I'm buying from Southeast Asia or buying from New York City, it doesn't matter. If it's good content, we're going to use it. So it seems like kind of a dawn of a new era right now, dawn of a new day. And I'm pretty excited about where we're at and where we're going. So I think that's the direction we're headed with AI, and there's going to be some new search engines pop up. The biggest problem I see right now is that they're throwing so much stuff onto the search results page that people are starting to get there's just too much junk on here. I came looking for a
Mm.
link. Yeah, 50% of the time you do want a silver platter answer. When I'm saying, what time does the football match start? Tell me what time it's on TV. You want that answer right then and there. But if you're digging research about a product and trying to understand a product, shopping or looking for flights, you want to know what that flight's about, where it's going, what its on time rate is. You want to know about it. You want to dig through a website to find it. So I worry that we might be throwing too much stuff on the SERPs, but if they're still getting traffic, more power to them. So it's interesting times, very interesting times.
So do you think your ideal panel right now would be to have a face-off between Google and Bing about AI at the next PubCon?
Yeah, we're going to do quite a bit with AI. Everybody wants it. All our feedback has been definitely people love the AI content. I gave a keynote, first time I'd ever keynoted at PubCon. We'd had a speaker from Microsoft who was worried that they were going to get laid off and they had no budget for travel. And so I'll talk about AI. Pardon me. And it has effectively been the highest rated talk I've ever given. And in fact, I've gotten several professional speaking gigs based on that AI talk. So obviously we're going to be hands-on with AI going forward. And it's going to enter the mix, content marketing, SEO, and AI. I think it's kind of the trifecta of marketing right now. So yeah, we're going to jump into it.
So just looking back over 23 years of PubCon, is there anything you can share that you've not shared before that happened backstage with any of the speakers?
Oh, we've had one speaker cancel the night before, who was sick, a keynote speaker. Only had one over the years cancel. That called me and told me they were sick. And then the next day there was a post pop up from them in the Bahamas. On Facebook. They forgot they weren't supposed to put a picture from the Bahamas up on Facebook. I'm not going to out the guy, but that you asked me earlier, will anybody not keynote? That person will not keynote.
Oh, I really want to know who that is now.
I forgot about that until we brought it up. But the story I told about Matt Cutts, I'd never shared that before. And yeah, there was some back and forth with Matt. There was one year we were getting so much traffic at Webmaster World, millions of page views a day at our peak, easily 2 million, 150,000 referrals a day from Google were coming in 2008 up until when was Panda Penguin, when they decided they hated forums and cut us off, basically. But we were getting so much traffic in all of this new stuff. You got do follow, no follow, you've got bot tags, you've got meta stuff, that I just started filtering that all off and saving that for the bots. If Google's going to pull 100,000 pages a day off of Webmaster World, I'm just going to feed it those bot content for bots and human content for humans. Well, Matt took offense. They said, no, you got to feed them the same page or we're going to ban you. And about 5 guys were standing around and heard that. And the next thing I know, I get online, Tabby's going to get banned from Google. What? We're not going to get banned. And it turned into a whole thing. And I said, yeah, all right, watch this. So I cut off Google because we had enough traffic on our own at the time. So yeah, I put up a robots.txt on Google. That was about the same time I started a blog in my robots.txt. So if you put a hashtag in your robots.txt, that indicates a comment. So I just had this huge blog I'd put in there, text-based, basically a newsletter talking about different things. And I'd post once a month. And we had the highest traffic robots.txt on the web. People would pull it just to read my blog. And in fact, to this day, there's a whole bunch of bots we put in there to ban in the robots.txt. And we started making up names. I did. And names for bots just to be able to track that. And to this day, you will find a bunch of those robots.txt. People just copied it because they didn't know what they needed. So they would just copy it. And my blog is still on other people's websites in the robots.txt to this day. So that's some of the back end stuff. Yeah. Took on a life of its own. So.
I'm gonna have to try and find that.
Oh,
So did you ever think when you started out on the bulletin boards in the early 80s how things would develop? I mean, actually thinking about it though, how much have things really changed? Because the bulletin boards were about communicating and connecting with people, right?
yeah,
And where we are today, we are communicating, connecting with people.
right, right.
Are the foundations still the same? Do you really think things have changed that much? Or, I mean, I know the text changed, but
Right. You know, in 85, I think I mentioned this before we started, I wrote a paper. Um, it was about what would become the World Wide Web. We just called it the web at the time. And it was about education online, and all of that's come to pass. You know, we have universities online now. Um, all of that's come to pass. I don't think it's changed entirely that much. You know, back in the day in the 80s, it was like knock, knock, knock. Is there anybody out there? And we had a whole different persona of interacting online. And as I mentioned, when Facebook came around and gave everybody identity, and LinkedIn came around and gave everybody identity, you no longer can hide from Jackrabbit44 online or whatever your nickname was. Once that happened, I think everything changed. It changed far more than the general consensus is that it changed. Once we gave everybody identity and a face and an email address and a phone number, everybody's behavior online changed. Yeah, it's changed, but it's been a subtle change, and the technology's obviously changed. You know, I still go to YouTube every once in a while to listen to the old Modem Connect songs. You know? If you listen to the Connect tones, there's a
oh
pretty cool one
yeah, that noise,
there.
it's great. And
I had it as my
obvious,
ringtone on my phone for a while, and every time it would ring in public, hey, I'd get somebody coming over and talking to me.
oh, that's a great idea.
So,
Well, it's been amazing speaking to Brett. I'm just going to ask you one last question. What do you miss most about the early days? Like, you know, really going back to the
mhm.
you know, the late 90s, the early days of PubCon. What do you miss the most?
We really touched on it. You know, there was more variety in search engines. And early on, you know, we have this huge following from the UK. And how did we get that? Well, here we are, just a forum. You know, the UK was a couple years behind the US because, well, the web started in the US and computers were cheaper in the US. We expanded faster than the UK did. So we had this huge online following from the UK. There were weeks where we would have a new post from, okay, this is SEO in Norway, this is SEO in Sweden, and we'd have somebody from Norway, somebody from Sweden, somebody from France talking about SEO in their particular country. We don't run into that as much anymore. It's not quite as ubiquitous. Everything is now localized. Everything's got to be local. All your results have to be local, and it can't come from any place but your own city and your own state. You want national? Go look at national. One of the funnest things I've done recently was I changed my location to London, England on Google, using a VPN and using the Google search settings. And I was just amazed by the different caliber and quality of results I got. So that's a major change. That is a major change. And one of the things I see from AI is kind of worldwide. And the beautiful thing coming next in AI is some of these translation services. There's an example out there now, NVIDIA Maxine, it's called, where in real time, like I'm talking right now, it adjusts my mouth, it adjusts my voice,
Mm,
and can translate it into one of hundreds of languages. So you could be talking with dozens of people all over the world, have it all translated into your perfect
mm,
language. I think that's big. I think that's
mm,
huge. To me, that sounds like something that could break down more barriers in real time. So
mm.
I'm kind of excited about that.
Well, Brett, it's been brilliant talking to you. It's been fascinating hearing about the early days and all your stories. So yeah, I think probably a good point to kind of wrap things up now and say thank you very much for being a guest here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. You do a wonderful job with these. So thank you for
Well,
doing
I
this.
really appreciate that. Thank you. And yeah, great to speak to you, Brett. So thank you very much and goodbye.